Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Welcome back to Just Relationships. You are in for a treat because if you tuned into last week's show, you know that I interviewed Sylvie Heyman, who is the author of Make It a Habit, Creating Health and Happiness for Your Body, Mind, and Spirit. Health and happiness for your body, mind, and spirit. Wow. Are you willing to make good habits? Are you willing to let go of habits that you know are what we call bad habits that actually not only help you, but actually hurt you? Do you find that you can go into despair or depression or guilt or even anger at yourself for having bad habits and not creating good habits? Well, I am thrilled to have back my friend and guest, Sylvie Heyman, again, the author of Make It a Habit. So welcome back, Sylvie. And you are saying to people in your book that you actually can choose to create good habits and stick by them because a habit by definition is automatic, or you don't have to think about it, you just do it. And it sounds like paradise to just automatically do something that's good for you. And what we talked about in last week's show was you had commented on start small, make it tiny, 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 even to the point of flossing one tooth, which I think is hysterical. I never heard anybody ever suggest something like that. And when it comes to not overeating, choose 1 or 2 days a week where you eat moderately and nutritionally, and it's starting small. And I imagine that when other people are running, they run and you walk, and how many, miles did you run or walk? Well, 2 miles. Well, I am proud to say I'm a member of the 2-block club. I walked 2 blocks and I'm very happy with myself. That sort of thing. Yes, Sylvie?
Absolutely. Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense to intentionally form good habits.
Everybody can have their own method, but there is a common denominator, and the common denominator does include to have awareness that the problem does exist, and then you go, okay, this is a problem that I'm having, not to despair, but what is my action plan? How can I overcome this? So it's an action plan, and then very importantly, is having accountability. So if you are accountable to someone, and it doesn't really matter, it would be great to have an accountability of a professional who could really give you very good advice that's based upon their experience and their knowledge. But it could be a kid. It could be, if you have in your family or friends a child who is, of course, we're not talking about a little one, but, anytime, 9 years old, 10 years old, and you say, if you feel that they're mature enough that they can help you, say, how would you like to help me on this project? And I'm trying to be good and I'm trying to do this and that. And I'd call you once a week and report to you. And I just need for you to listen to it. I don't want you to yell at me if I got off of it but just do you think you can do that? And, people do find somebody. And often doing it with a young person is really very good because you feel that you are giving that young person an experience that they will take through in their lives, so it's nice to have a young person, but it could be anybody. And
That's so interesting. I never heard that put that way, to choose a younger person to be your accountability partner.
Yes.
And tell me more about the reason that could work very effectively.
I think maybe an adult could already be struggling with their own habits and maybe not be able to support you as well. Young people are, very feel privileged and, oh my goodness, I'm going to be helping somebody. So that's
important.
Yeah, and to be partnering with a young person so that they can start formulating their good habits and learning. So I think it's a good, but you have to find the right match, of course.
The right match. And it's so important what you said in terms of asking someone to just listen to me and don't yell at me.
The idea is not that you're going to yell at me, but I need to do this. And of course, you explain the program. Before you even ask them, you explain the program and you say, I'm looking for somebody that I can be accountable because it will help me, achieve my goal if I could have that. So, and then you explain the program. And, some people will say, oh, I don't think so. And other people will say, oh, I'd love to do that. And that already gets them. If it's a young person, you are actually helping, you molding their own thinking that how important it is to be healthy, to be within a certain healthy weight. And, you're actually imparting that kind of information that they will never forget. Whereas an older person already has their own habits going.
So I want to come back to the triple A's, but I do want to make attention to the fact that in your book, Make It a Habit, you have a chapter called Habits for Children.
Yeah.
And basically your contention is the best way to help children have good habits is to have them yourself so that you become the role model for them. And they just see that you do it. And you also talk about having a time, a definite time to do something. A time of the day, perhaps, but just set something like a marker in your calendar. And I think you even talk about the place. Make it the same place, the time and the place.
It does help if you have the continuity and established a certain routine. It does.
Right.
It does help to have that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The nature of positive routines. Make it a routine.
Right.
Make it a routine. So coming back to awareness, action, and accountability. Again, I even though you talk about other things, the exercise, I go to the food because that's my bugaboo. That's one of my specialties. And I know how hard it is. I know what we're up against, especially in America. Americans have much higher rates of obesity than every other country, actually. The standard American diet, SAD, is actually that. It's very sad how the junk food industry spends millions of dollars trying to psych us out and actually creating junk foods that have the three things that stimulate the brain to cravings: sugar, salt, and fat. And sugar, salt, and fat together do not exist in nature. So they're actually tricking us to create these foods. I call them fake foods. And the fact that they are very, very tasty, they're less expensive. And the other thing is we're constantly fed the idea how wonderful they are on commercials. So you see all of these slender, happy, young people romping in meadows, eating junk food. So there is the association. No problem. I can do this. It's easy. It's quick. It's delicious. And so, as you can tell, I have a pet peeve against this kind of commercialism and glorifying the junk food. And I call junk food dressed up poison, dressed up poison. So the idea of your first A, awareness. The other thing is that we also have a lot of information on healthy eating and dieting available in the culture. And as you said, last week, the idea that when your patients came to you for help with all their physical infirmities, you said lose weight and they'd say, okay. And then a few months later, they'd show up and they hadn't lost a pound. They may even have gained a pound. And then I gave you pushback last week where I said in your idea of keep it moderate and have just a little of this and a little of that. And I said that as someone who identifies as a sweet addict in recovery, I do not go there. I do not have a little of this and a little of that. I have my own hard line called no sugar. And it has served me very well because many people say, oh, being a food addict is the hardest habit to kick because you have to eat to live. Well, you do not have to eat sugar to live. So that is a complete myth. I just want to share, because you talked last week about creating a loop where you have pleasure from this good habit. And you don't, in my book, have immediate pleasure of instant weight loss when you're turning down the cake that everyone else is eating. But my pleasure is in seeing myself for the first time in my life maintaining an average weight. I was never underweight. I was always overweight, not that much, called the chubby category. But just taking a look in the mirror, and sometimes I have to remind myself that I am average weight because I still expect to see a heavier me when I look in the mirror. And when I see a lighter me, I'm still thrilled. As I said to you last week, I haven't had sugar for 6 years. And after 5 years a year later, I had lost the weight. So for 5 years, I've maintained an average weight and I'm just loving it. And the idea of when I put on my clothes, I know they're going to fit. Whereas before, because I would be losing weight and gaining weight, dieting and overeating, I said, oh my God, I would dread putting on clothes because they wouldn't fit anymore. So let's just come back to the awareness, action, and accountability. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to that?
Well, you cannot do anything. You cannot help another person to do anything at all if they themselves are not recognizing that there is something that has to be done. So if I will never initiate any kind of a conversation about all the different tricks and ways that we can trick our minds so that we can go ahead and develop good habit. If somebody is completely out of that, their minds are not even there. If you talk about it, it's almost as if they look beyond you. They're not absorbing or processing. There's nothing much you can do. So that's why awareness is important. You cannot work with somebody who doesn't even think that they have a problem or doesn't recognize that they have a problem. So some of it has to come just simply because they're ready. And when they're ready, you sort of seize and that's where a lot of your programs, there are programs out there. I happen to be a health coach for one of the programs, and only because I believe that they've done, they have a program that really works very well. There's small meals and so forth, but mainly it's the accountability. If you know that you are in a program, and it doesn't mean that you can never enjoy some of these things. It's just how are you going to enjoy? People think, I can't live without having a chocolate cake ever, but it's not about that. It's not about learning how and getting into a habit of just taking just a tiny little bit, savoring it and say, I've had it. And that takes time. That takes time to develop that kind of thinking that I don't have to have the whole cake or even a whole big piece. I can have just a taste of it. Some people say, oh no, once I have a taste, I'm gone. But not if you're in a program and not if you have accountability.
That's interesting. Yes. I think whatever works for you. Okay. I would add a fourth A to your program, which is acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Awareness and acceptance. This is the way it's been for me. So if someone says, I've tried having a little bit of this or that at times with an accountability partner in Overeaters Anonymous, which I used to be a member of, it would be every morning you'd have to report your food, what you're going to eat. So the idea is intention and planning. And perhaps there are some programs, the program you're a health coach in, that would say my intention today when I go to this party is to have one dessert. And I'm planning for it. I'm conscious of it. I accept the extra calories. I know they won't make me gain weight because I'm eating a good moderate calories that day, that sort of thing. So I'm not going to give you any more pushback on this, Sylvie Heyman, because I know you're familiar with habits, compulsive habits. I know that's part of your own history, as well as your repertoire as a health coach. And so you know how to do that. So acceptance. And I would just say that I would put out a shout out to 12-step groups, because the good news is they're free. They're free. They're readily available. And one of the slogans in Overeaters Anonymous is take the best and leave the rest. Take the best and leave the rest. So whatever works for you, I think that's the trick. Awareness, know thyself. What works for me? Now I have to share with you and our audience something I don't talk about much, but 6 years ago, I used hypnosis to help me. And I went to a fabulous hypnotherapist who specialized in helping really heavy people lose weight easily and maintain it. And she was in Massachusetts. She is since retired. But her motto to me, and it was actually a whole audience that she spoke to and hypnotized the whole audience, according to her, which I believe, because I listened to her, and she was literally able to do that. She said, just by looking at you, I'm hypnotizing you. Who knows? All I knew is that I was listening to a 3-hour lecture that was absolutely fascinating. But basically, her chief command was no sugar. I'm curious, do you use hypnosis at all, or do you think hypnosis is it important? It could be an important tool for people?
Well, to answer the first question, unfortunately, I do not use hypnosis. I am not trained to do that. And the second question is most absolutely. I think that anything at all, and you have to give the various different solutions, because people differ in how they're going to respond to certain things. And if one technique or one way doesn't work for them, you need to have something else to give them. So I have actually recommended hypnosis to some people who I felt had good luck, or not good luck, but good results with other problems, and such as smoking. And if that's their inclination, I have suggested that they go ahead and do it for overeating, and just simply keep in mind that that's part of action plan. Okay.
Yes.
The first thing is the awareness, right? And then we have an action plan. So that action plan is really very versatile. You can choose whatever action plan you think will work for you, or several action plans. So you can just try one, and like, for instance, hypnosis, And if that works, that's great. And if it works for a length of time, that's even better. But if that doesn't work, there are other action plans to take. There are many different programs out there. And then there's the basic idea that you are going too fast and you're losing momentum because of that. So slow down and choose slowly, go to the gym, just look at the machine, talk to them, and get away. Remember that. That's how you got started. And after a while, you are going to make the habit of just going there or just thinking about that person even and saying, oh, yes, I remember what he said. And then go ahead and pay attention to what they said. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm thinking about the general literature on habit forming. One of the tips is to make it public. Make it public, and that's what you're saying, the accountability piece. Yes. Because if you don't let anyone in on it, you know that you can lie to yourself, you can fool yourself, and just make it known besides yourself to at least one other person, and be consistent and planful, as you said. If you say you're going to start with one day eating no sugar or junk food or any other processed simple carbohydrates, say, which is what I do. I steer away from processed foods. I only eat whole foods. And I've never been happier and I've never felt better. And I want to put in a pitch to people about that. And so I do want to ask you something else about other kinds of habits, because if that's okay, is there anything else you wanted to say about that? Okay, because what I'm fascinated.
Yes, it's not. I just wanted to say one thing about it, that it's not easy, and don't put a lid on saying, I will not eat this, because when you go to a party, people will start to influence you. Oh, come on, have a little bit. So have a little bit. And you'd be surprised. We'll look at what? That's a little bit. Yes, that's a little bit. You told me, have a little bit, taste it. So I'm going to taste it. This is grandma's chocolate cake. You can't tell me that you're not going to taste grandma's chocolate. Yes, I am. And you put exactly that tiny little amount. And they look at you. Oh, that's not. Oh, yes, it is. It's plenty. Oh, the savor. I actually can taste that chocolate better than all of you because I savor it. So there's ways to, be ahead of what people are going to ask you. So that's what I wanted to say.
And to be planful and to do some volume, testing, like make sure portion control. And again, I think it's really best to know thyself and know what works for you and what doesn't, and to be true to yourself and honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to ask you about your chapter called Habits of the Spirit. So tell us what that means. I find that so fascinating, Sylvie Heyman.
I enjoyed writing that chapter because I myself was going through a time when I was wanting to develop a habit. So I just nothing more than to say you start off and you do whether you want to just pray or whether you want to go to church or synagogue or whatever it is that you want to do. You're not going to feel comfortable at the beginning. It's going to feel like, well, I don't do this very often and I don't know what I'm doing here. But just trust it that you are just establishing a habit. And again, you just start very, very slow and you work yourself just, into it as you are able to absorb it. So in terms of, for instance, I wanted to really pick up a little bit more on religion. I just felt that I had a lot of faith and a lot of spirituality, but I wanted it to be more channeled within the Jewish religion. So I just started to do once a while. I would go to temple, and then it would be once a month, and then I started to like it, and then I would go more often. And now it's an automatic thing for me. What am I doing Saturday morning? I'm going to temple, and now I have to break that habit because now I need to go on Fridays because they don't have a lot of services on Saturday, but they have a full service on Friday nights, and I was really fighting that because I don't want to do that at night. It's not my time, but I have to do it. So I still haven't gone there at night, but I know that if I do one night a month and then the rest of the time Saturday mornings, that eventually that one night's going to become two, and I'm going to automatically start eventually. I'm talking about within 2-3 months. I'm just going to be going in on Friday nights, like I wanted to. But you have to establish that ahead of time, and that's what action plan is all about.
Yes, and I do want to make the point and underscore your point that the old brain, the primitive brain, does not accept radical change. It is very, very threatened by radical change. So it's almost as if our new brain, the neocortex, which has to do with the intention and the thinking and the planning and the choosing and the discernment, needs to coax the primitive brain into the new habits. And there's your, as you're saying, accountability, awareness, action. And so what you talked a lot about last week, keeping it small, tiny, 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 incremental, and what you're saying now, the whole incremental piece. And really, the brain does not like radical change. The brain will balk, but the small change is okay because it's not threatening. Because, when Abraham Maslow talked about self-actualization, full self-fulfillment for people, he said only a fraction of 1% of people are self-actualized. And how is that possible if our natural inclination as human beings is to be growthful? And the answer is because the equally strong force is a fear of the unknown. And Sylvie Heyman, on that note, we have to end. Oh my goodness. So what are we left with? Sylvie Heyman, author of Make It a Habit. Make It a Habit, Creating Health and Happiness for Your Body, Mind, and Spirit. Heyman is spelled Heyman. So what are we saying? Make it small, make it consistent, make it accountable. And you do have the ability to create positive habits in your own life. Thank you so much, Sylvie Heyman. It's been such a pleasure. I look forward to learning that people are following some good habits because of your tutelage, your teaching. And this is you're welcome. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.